The knock on my door was sharp, urgent. When I opened it, my parents stood there, two strangers wrapped in the skin of people I used to love. My mother's lips pressed thin, my father's eyes hard but restless. "We're here to meet our grandson," my mother announced, like it was a demand, not a request. 20 years, 2 decades of silence, exile, and shame. And now, suddenly, they wanted access to the life they once threw into the gutter. I let the silence stretch, let them sweat under the weight of my stare. Then I smiled, just faintly, and stepped aside. "Come in," I said. What they saw when they crossed that threshold shocked them. I was 16 when the test strip turned pink, 10 weeks pregnant, scared, stupid, hopelessly naive enough to think my parents would protect me. Instead, my father's voice thundered through the kitchen. "Get out! You've disgraced us!" My mother stood by him, arms folded, eyes icy. They didn't just kick me out, they erased me. No calls, no money, no visit when I was curled in a hospital bed, screaming through labor. I raised my son with nothing but grit. I scrubbed floors, waited tables, studied at night with a baby asleep on my chest. Every sacrifice, every drop of blood and sweat I gave for him. And slowly, painfully, it paid off. I built a business, then another. I invested smart. By 30, I was independent. By 35, wealthy. My son never wanted for anything. Not love, not stability, not opportunity. Everything they had stripped from me, I rebuilt. Better, stronger, without them. The betrayal wasn't just their abandonment. It was what I learned later. At 21, after years of silence, I found out my mother had told the extended family I'd run away, that I'd abandoned them, that my child was probably fatherless and feral. The shame wasn't theirs, it was mine. They'd twisted it that way, and the family believed them. I carried that rage quietly, let it sharpen me, fuel me. I didn't waste it on screams or pleas. I let it harden into something far more dangerous: patience. So when they showed up on my doorstep 2 decades later, I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream the words I'd repeated in my head for years. I welcomed them in. Because the best revenge isn't loud. It's silent, calculated, surgical. They sat stiff on my leather couch, eyes scanning the house. The marble floors, the chandelier, the framed degrees and photos lining the walls. Their silence was telling. They thought I'd fail. They expected poverty, shame, maybe some cramped apartment with peeling paint. Instead, they were in a home that made theirs look like a shack. And then came the moment they'd come for. "Where is he?" my father asked. My son, the grandson they had abandoned before he took his first breath. I called his name, and he came down the stairs. Tall, confident, his suit sharp, his eyes sharper. At 20, he carried himself like a man who had never bent to anyone's will. My parents rose. Their faces softened, suddenly desperate, greedy. They saw in him a second chance at legacy. But he didn't look at them with warmth, only cold, detached recognition. "This is your grandson," I said, my voice steady, my smile sharper now. "And he knows everything." I had told him the truth years ago, every detail, every insult, every abandonment. I hadn't raised him on bitterness, but on truth. And truth has a way of cementing loyalty deeper than blood. So when my mother tried to reach for him, he stepped back. "You don't get to touch me," he said flatly. Her face cracked. My father's fists clenched. "You can't poison him against us forever," he snapped. I tilted my head. "Poison? No. I just gave him the facts. You did the rest." Then came the kill shot. My son walked to the cabinet by the wall and pulled out a folder. He dropped it on the coffee table in front of them. Inside, documents, deeds, proof of the trust I had built in his name. Millions. More wealth than my parents had ever dreamed of. He leaned forward, voice calm, deliberate. You came here thinking you'd claim a grandson, maybe even a slice of what you thought we had. But you're nothing to me, nothing to her. You're not family. You're strangers who made your choice 20 years ago. The words hit harder than screams ever could. My mother's lip trembled. My father's face went red. But there was nothing they could say. Not a single excuse could erase the years, the cruelty, the abandonment. They had shown up demanding access to blood. Instead, they were confronted with the truth. Blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does. And they had none. I stood, smoothing my dress, and nodded toward the door. "Thank you for stopping by," I said, voice sharp with finality. "But you'll never see us again." They hesitated. My mother opened her mouth to plead. My father's hand tightened on her arm. And then, without another word, they walked out.